Hello everyone, welcome back to the Green Man channel. Hope you're all good and well. So we all waited a long time for the Wheel of Time TV series to be released to us, and eventually it was delivered to us by Amazon Prime. But how would we all receive this series? How would we all react to it? Well, I'm going to give my offering or my view on how I felt this series did, both as an adaptation, as a TV series in its own right. And I'm going to be giving this series or this season of The Wheel of Time an overall score. But to achieve that, I will also be giving scores by category, using seven different categories to achieve that final average score. The 7 categories I am going to be scoring here will be acting. I will also be scoring costumes and costume design, dialogue, adaptation value, character development, music score, and also CGI special effects. So my first category here, I'm going to talk about and hopefully justify my thoughts and give a score on is acting. Now, this for me was one of the high points of this series. I thought all the actors were pretty good and did pretty good jobs. A few in particular I thought did a great job of their characterization, their portrayal of certain characters. I would especially point out or pick out Moiraine, Rosamund Pike, her performances as Moiraine, Daniel Henney as Lan. I thought he was terrific as well. Both of those I thought got the characters as I imagined them as well from the books pretty much spot on. The other person who didn't appear much in the series, who I thought was excellent, was the character that portrayed Logain Ablar. That was Alvaro Morte. I think I've got his name correct there, and he was excellent too. Also, I would give special shout out, I think, to Zoe Robbins, who portrayed Nynaeve. As a whole, I thought the young actors did okay as their each of the individual characters. I would say, I don't have too many complaints about the acting. Actually, I would be quite happy to give this about an 8 out of 10 as an overall score. And that's where I'm going to leave the acting. So next up is costume design. I thought all the costumes were pretty good, especially for the Aes Sedai. I thought they got those costumes pretty much spot on. I did enjoy some of the other, costume designs they did. I thought generally across the board, this was also pretty good. You got the Tinkers. They had pretty good costume design. The villains, the costume design was okay. I mean, maybe that could have been improved. I thought maybe, particularly the Forsaken could have had maybe a better costume actually and been made to look a little bit more like a Forsaken character. But, I thought overall this was really good. I would give costume an 8 out of 10 as well. Now, the next category I'm going to score is adaptation value. Now, this is where I think the series does fall down a bit. In my opinion, I do think that a lot of this is down to the choices of how this has been adapted to the TV. I'm not saying that you would ever be able to easily perfect a TV series of such an epic fantasy like The Wheel of Time. This is a real challenge. And as I understand it, Rafe Judkins was only, he had only 8 episodes in which to work with. And I think for a first season of Wheel of Time, you probably need a bit more than that, realistically, to get as much in as possible to sort of get across the Wheel of Time world and get that sense of world building really nailed. And I thought the adaptation did suffer a bit because of the shortness of time. Sure, 8 episodes and almost 8 hours of running time, but for me that still wasn't quite enough, and the adaptation suffered a bit as a result of that. But also certain choices with how the story was adapted I think were problematic for me. Although there was some excellent focusing on the Aes Sedai, I thought the Emmonsfield characters suffered a bit because of this. And I also thought that particularly Perrin and Mat, those characters have not been fleshed out nearly enough, and they're so central to the Wheel of Time story. This may come, in later series, this could really, really affect the story, I think, in a negative way. They're great characters. I really think Mat in particular, I know the recasting thing is probably the reason that Mat was left out the last couple of episodes, but to me, that could really harm his character. However good the replacement is, that that to me completely harmed his character. So adaptation has suffered as a result of those things, and I think it's been, fairly decent in places, and I did enjoy the one episode where I thought the adaptation worked extremely well. Actually, was episode 4, The Dragon Reborn, with all the Logain stuff and the Aes Sedai interactions with Logain as a character. That was great, but as a whole, I don't think I can score the adaptation value too high. I will therefore be scoring adaptation value with just a 5 out of 10 for this category. The next category I'm going to talk about is dialogue. Now, dialogue was actually, I thought dialogue was really quite good, and a lot of the characters did have good dialogue, some of which was taken or inspired by parts of the book, obviously, but some of which was just presumably written especially for the TV series itself. But again, I think some crucial dialogue was missing, again, to paint a better picture of the world these guys are in and their story threads, and to really help with a category I'm about to come on, character development as well. So dialogue, I've given a 7 out of 10. For me, there was some really good dialogue here, which I really enjoyed. But as I say, I think some of it wasn't quite up to scratch, and sometimes too much time is spent on parts of the story I wouldn't have spent as much time on. I think some of the interrelational things between the Emmonsfield Five, which weren't in the books as well, which was used here, I might not have bothered with. I think there are other areas the dialogue could have been better spent on to build a better picture of the Wheel of Time world. Character development, dialogue gets a 7 out of 10 from me. So moving on next to character development. Now, some of this, again, I have mixed feelings really with character development. I thought some of it was excellent. Again, the Aes Sedai characters, I think, benefited the most from the choices made in this series and the character development. But also, I thought Lan was especially good, as I say. That's partly the acting, perhaps, but generally the character development with him was very good. I thought the way that even the Emmonsfield Five characters, they had some good development, and Matt in the early part of the series also was developed reasonably well, although I did want to see more of the trickster Matt that we know from the books. So there were aspects of this that were good, and some of the characters I say that were more slightly outside characters were developed especially well too, like Logain. I would have liked to have seen a bit more development with Padam Fain and characters like that, as I've alluded to in the episode. So character development gets a 6 out of 10 from me. Now, next up is a music score, which to many might not be a category worth scoring, but for me it plays an important part in any TV series. The music cues placed very well can really impact a scene very positively. And I thought The Wheel of Time did a really good job with the music, with both the title sequence and the choices of music with particular scenes. Don't know how many people noticed this, but for me, this was actually a very high point in the series, and it gets my highest score. Music gets a 9 out of 10 from me for this series, for this adaptation. I thought this was one of the highlights of this series. How many of you also felt the same with that? I'd be interested to know. Drop in the comments. CGI / special effects is my last category here. So this is the 7th category now. I'm scoring out of 10. CGI special effects gets just a 6 out of 10. Now, for the modern day, I felt a lot of this could have been better, and it wasn't that it was terrible. Some of it was actually very good, and certain portrayals of the one power and the use of the streaks or the cords, flying around people, and the Aes Sedai were actually quite good. But a lot of the CGI wasn't, to my taste, wasn't good enough for me for a modern day. We're in 2022 now, but this came out in 2021. Should have been a bit better for my money. So CGI special effects get 6 out of 10. Cite a few examples. I thought the CGI, the Trollocs, was sometimes clumsy. I thought the CGI in places of the battle scenes, 1 or 2 of those, wasn't great and could have still been better. Even Lord of the Rings back in the early 2000s, then maybe they had some more money then, but I don't know anything about budget. But even that looks better probably in a lot of places than this series does, which says something that there's a bit of an issue here. They need to work on their budget or they need to work on their effects for this series better. So that's my roundup. Where does that leave us? What's my average score for this series? Well, it works out interestingly as exactly a 7 out of 10. Appreciating some of the problems I have with the adaptation and its value as an adaptation, perhaps this should be a tiny bit even lower than that. But I think I'd settle with around a very high 6 or a low 7. I think this is about right for this series. I think it was a decent effort, you know. Lots of people have really gone up the series and not been happy with it at all. But I think it was a decent enough effort. And there's enough there to build on for a next series. Sure, there's a lot that needs work. I would say that. There's a lot that needs work in this adaptation to make it that bit better and to make appeal to wider audiences, I would say. But I would say it's decent enough to still build on for the future. Thank you as always, everyone, for watching. Do drop in the comments, you know, however you felt about this series. Drop in the comments, perhaps give your own score for the series. If you want to break it down into some categories like I did, you're very welcome to do that as well. But thanks as always, guys. As ever, do feel free to drop a like and subscribe if you like these kind of videos. I do cover some sci-fi, fantasy and horror stuff on this channel, but also a lot of music related things like album reviews and lists as well. But take care, everybody. It's bye from me. Bye for now.